Okay, we got example 3 on completing the square. And when we look at this one, this looks like, oh, so easy. X squared plus 5x plus 3. Oh, I could factor that. I could just factor it and get the answer simply. Let me get the right marker here. But the problem is, if I look at this, the only way to get 3 is 1 times 3. And the problem is 1x plus 3x would be 4x, not 5x. So factoring this into two binomials is not going to work. So this is another example where completing the square comes in handy. So what we're going to do is, first thing we do is we need to get this term to the other side, the c term, the term without the variable, to the right side of the equation. So I subtract 3. So now I got x squared plus 5x equals negative 3. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out how to make this a perfect square. This one's a little trickier because when I look at my b term, the 5, remember, you're going to take the b, divide it by 2, and then square it. The problem with 5 divided by 2 is that's a decimal, that's 2.5, but you're still got to do it. So 5 divided by 2 is 2.5, and then I square it. 2.5 squared, let me get my calculator here, 2.5 squared is 6.25. And that is what we have to add to both sides. All you do is take that 5, divide it by 2, and square it, and that tells you what you're going to add to both sides. So now I've got x squared plus 5x plus 6.25. Don't round that, keep it as is, and that's going to equal negative 3 plus 6.25, which is 3.25. So now I can factor this. Remember, it's going to factor into a perfect square. That was the whole point of what we did. All we got to do is 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. So this is x plus 2.5. X plus 2.5 equals 3.25. And remember, since these are both the same, I can write this as x plus 2.5 squared equals 3.25. My marker's dying. Let me find a new marker. See if this one works. Yeah, that seems like that'll work. All right, so we got x plus 2.5 in parentheses squared equals 3.25. And this is where we can take the square root of both sides. And remember, this is plus or minus the square root of 3.25. So over here, the square root and the squared cancel out. So I just have x plus 2.5, and that equals plus or minus whatever the square root of 3.25 is. I need my calculator here. Square root of 3.25 is 1.80. And I'm actually going to get rid of this equal sign because this is now going to be approximate because I had to round plus or minus 1.80. So now I'm going to bring this up here because I need more room. I can split it into two equations. My first equation would be x, this marker's dying too, x plus 2.5 is approximately 1.80. And my other equation would be x plus 2.5 is approximately negative 1.80. X plus 2.5 is approximately negative 1.80. I'm running out of room. So now I can solve both of these one-step equations here by subtracting 2.5. So I do that. My first one, x is approximately negative 1.8 minus 2.5. What would that be? Negative 0.7. Let me double check myself. 1.80 minus 2.5. Yeah, negative 0.70. If you just put negative 0.7, it's fine. It doesn't matter. I'm putting two digits because that's how you do these typically. But I would say if you had negative 0.7, I'd still give you credit. So this one, subtract 2.5. That would be x is approximately negative 1.8 minus 2.5 should be 4.3, right? Yep, negative 4.30. So my answer is x is approximately negative 0.70 or x is approximately negative 4.30. One little trick you can do to kind of check to make sure you are on the right track is just take these two numbers and multiply them together, and you should get about 3. It won't be exactly because we rounded. So if I do just 0.7 times 4.3, I do that, I got 3.01. I can say, all right, good, it's about 3. If you multiply those two numbers together and don't get that term, you're way off. You made a mistake somewhere along the way. So that's a nice little easy, quick way to check to make sure, did I do this right? So we've got our answer there. It was x is approximately negative 0.70 or x is approximately negative 4.30. All right, I assigned you some practice problems out of the book. You need to do those. There's an answer key for you to check. And then after that, you need to do the quiz in Google Classroom. So this was completing the square.